Apologize for what's about to take place. My creation process. Watch the flow take shape.
Here to take off my mask and then break off a nigga something proper. Hit niggas up with the chopper. Pimp type MJ. I'ma write this hit quick.
Watch my hand. Take a pen and make the notebook paper bleed. Make you look commercial rappers bow down on your knees.
You wanna know who shit to get? Young nigga, well this is it, so now you can clear out your CD. Case cause we be in regular rotation on XM and on your TV.
8Ball and MJG, Memphis, Tennessee, active since 1991. Today's feature is a legendary rap group that were important in laying the groundwork for Southern rap in the 90s and early 2000s. Their impact on hip-hop and rap was undeniable, and they also did well on the charts with 3 gold albums and 3 top 10 Billboard albums. Yet, for some reason, their recognition always seems niche or low-key, opposed to other legendary Southern rap groups like OutKast, Goodie Mob, UGK, 3 6 Mafia, and a few others that are mentioned before the Orange Mound legends. But as far as talent, timing, and developed skill, 8Ball and MJG embodied what it meant to be Southern artists at the time and released what many call classics in hip-hop, like their first album, Coming Out Hard, that was unusual at the time with only 9 songs, while rappers were placing as much songs as they could on their albums, along with bonus tracks. Coming Out Hard was soulful and blues-drenched, which perfectly represented their rich in music history hometown of Memphis, while their concepts were always aiming to be futuristic and ahead of everybody else, giving them their own lane to ride in under the Southern rap umbrella. Having your own lane was important in the 90s no matter what region you represented, as it was necessary to survive the golden era where new artists were blooming every year with their own flavor that made them legends in their own right. Many of the rappers we hold as legends today were from that era, so you can imagine what it took to stand out in a time they were all fresh in the game or in their prime with youthful energy to bring to the game, as opposed to the 2010s to now, where you'd be hard-pressed to find more than a handful of future rap legends that broke ground and added to the lineage of hip-hop. It made those days ultra competitive, so to even be mentioned in the same breath as UGK or OutKast should be commended. They released 8 studio albums from 93 to 2010, as well as their individual solo work that's also held in high regard. Every region had their own fight to be seen and heard in the again competitive hip-hop landscape, with the South as a whole underrated and often overlooked during the 90s as the West Coast and gangsta rap enjoyed their run atop the game. Then the East Coast had their time, clashing in the middle to produce hip-hop's first divide between West and East that took 2 of the best to ever do it in Biggie and Pac. While that was going on, the South had something to say and were tired of waiting their turn. 8Ball and MJG were one of those groups, but they often go underrated and overlooked for these reasons. Why is that? Let's talk about it. Salute to Ken Steele on IG for this request. It's your boy JC StuntedGrowthMusic. Let's get it, man. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. 8Ball and MJG, aka Primrose Smith and Marlon Goodwin, are rappers from Memphis, Tennessee, the Mound or Orange Mound specifically, who met in the 7th grade at Ridgeway Middle School, where they'd usually have to ride the school bus together, but coming closer and realizing they lived not too far from one another in the same neighborhood. As solo artists, they were doing their own thing on the talent show circuit until 8Ball would meet Reggie Boylan, who signed him to his local label as Primrose before he was 8Ball. Boylan would bring both he and MJG to his studio as solo artists before he put them together as a group. He's said to have influenced their pimp-inspired persona and lyrics. Suave House Records' Tony Draper found interest in 8Ball and MJG, traveling to Memphis to meet them and propose a deal to buy them out their contract, but a meeting between he and Boylan never happened, and a week later Boylan says 8Ball and MJG left Memphis to go to Houston and signed to Suave House Records. They immediately got in the studio, producing their first album all in-house, featuring 9 songs that many deem classics, and the rest was history. Stunt number 1, Overshadowed. One reason 8Ball and MJG don't seem to get the recognition they deserve is because of all the other rap talent they came up around at the time that maybe had this or that put them over the Memphis rap duo. This was easy to happen to artists in that era, as like mentioned, new artists were popping up everywhere, and so many of them were good to all-time greats. As far as groups, Atlanta had OutKast, who were producing nothing but straight southern classics and hits on the charts, which is why Andre 3000 even had the chance to have the mic at the '95 Source Awards to stake a flag for the South and proclaim they had something to say too, and that it wasn't just about the East or West Coast, as OutKast accepted the award for New Artist of the Year. Texas had UGK and Ghetto Boys, and Memphis had 3 6 Mafia and 8Ball and MJG, all coming up parallel to one another, creating a well of dope Southern artists all fighting for notoriety and their time in the sun. All those groups mentioned, along with many others that came along a little later, had a few things 8Ball and MJG didn't have outside the music that influenced how far their names traveled throughout the genre and with its fans. Things like most of them were much more open to and equipped to make mainstream music that could be played on radio and promoted by labels at the time that seemed much more profitable than the music Ball and G were making. It always felt like what they were doing, there were always other artists that did it better mainstream-wise. You wanted Southern pimp rhymes and anthems that were in rotation, UGK had that on lock. Wanted a certain look or star personality, OutKast had you covered. Wanted something far left, you had 3 6 Mafia, who inspired a generation with their dark aura and horrorcore trap music. They didn't only fight groups for the spotlight, the South, since the mid-90s throughout the 2000s, had waves of rain, and in that time 8Ball and MJG always found themselves overshadowed. Stunt number 2, signing to Bad Boy Records. After releasing their final album contractually on Suave House, the 1999 In Our Lifetime, 8Ball and MJG would leave as they didn't feel they were getting their just due monetarily. They first signed to J-Core and Interscope Records, releasing the album Space Age Forever in 2000 that wasn't promoted the way they would have liked, and after the album they signed with Bad Boy South, P. Diddy's new upstart, an avenue to capitalize on the South's rise beginning in the 2000s. At first, it wasn't a bad idea because Puff, if he didn't know anything else, he knew how to work the mainstream and turn artists into superstars once they had what it took to be. He saw 8Ball and MJG's potential and untapped ability as he thought to be mainstream artists, and 4 years later in 2004, they released their highest charting album, Living Legends. They delved into Southern crunk music popular at the time and had all the industry features you could think of that made a good mainstream platter, and it worked initially, but Puff wanted to push them even more mainstream, encouraging the group to make more ringtone-inspired, crunk Southern songs that were even more radio-friendly than their first album. It's not like 8Ball and MJG refuse, but it's not who they were as people nor rappers. Their personalities weren't all in the video like Puff, and they didn't have a look in demand by fans. They made good ride/vibe music with the occasional mainstream single, certainly not reduced to ringtone rappers or thirsty for radio success. Their second Bad Boy South album flopped in 2007, and 8Ball and MJG and Bad Boy parted ways. Stunt number 3, signing to other artists. This one is solely based on opinion, but I've always felt that artists signing to other artists that came up around the same time or has nearly the same amount of revere by fans don't usually work out for the signee. When 8Ball and MJG signed to Bad Boy South, it was a move that initially worked out for the group, delivering their highest charting album, but long-term Bad Boy had so much going on that they were never going to be featured artists on the label, along with Diddy evolving himself from producer and label exec to solo artist. When 8Ball and MJG signed with T.I.'s Grand Hustle Records after leaving Bad Boy, it presented the same dilemma, as T.I. was one of the biggest artists in the game, with his own career at the forefront of the label, placing 8Ball and MJG consistently on the back burner to his success. They released one album on Grand Hustle in 2010, their lowest charting album since 2000's Space Age Forever. It was highly critiqued for trying too hard to reach mainstream industry success, heavy in features that included Soulja Boy, one of the biggest ringtone artists at the time. The album sold 16,000 copies first week, concluding that while 8Ball and MJG were Southern legends and did produce Southern works of art, their time attempting to cross over mainstream was pretty much over. It would be their final album as a group, moving on to solo endeavors, MJG releasing 2 albums since then in 2013 and 14, and 8Ball's 2012 Life Quest solo album. At that point, many hoped 8Ball and MJG moved into their own space in hip-hop instead of signing to other established artists, and it in its own way overshadowed them even more. All in all, 8Ball and MJG still made classics that will stand the test of time, and they do have a fan base that remembers their impact and holds them to high standards, but in terms of recognition, they weren't able to compete on the level of the bigger rap groups or Southern solo artists at the time mainstream, and weren't ones to fight anyone for not giving them their just due. They remained low-key and will remain legends in the game for those that know, but for these reasons, their growth was stunted. Salute, much respect. It's your boy JC, StuntedGrowthMusic, and I'm out.